Hello everyone, I hope you all had a nice Christmas holiday. I just came back from a Christmas holiday myself, so hence why there were no new videos in the past couple of days. So I do apologize for that, but now let's take a look at one of the games from day one of the World Rapid Championship. Since Anand is the defending World Rapid Champion, I've decided to cover one of his games. So Anand had white here against the Israeli Grandmaster Tal Baron. Anand opened with e4, Baron responded with c5, knight to f3, knight c6, and bishop b5. Anand goes for the Rossolimo variation. So here black played g6, white castled, bishop to g7, knight to c3, d6, and here Anand takes the knight, so giving up the bishop pair to damage black's structure. And here e5 from Anand, a typical move in these kinds of structures. So if black takes the pawn, then his pawns are now incredibly weak. So here bishop to g4 was played, pinning the knight. Anand played e takes d6, e takes d6, and here h3. So black has two options here. He can either take the knight or retreat the bishop. So let's say he retreats the bishop. Then here white has to move d4. And if black doesn't want to further weaken his structure by allowing white to take on c5, he has to take on d4, but here the knight recapture is quite annoying for black, hitting the bishop and the pawn on c6. So here after the move h3, black decided to take on f3. We have queen takes f3, knight to e7, so that anticipates rook to e1 and also protects c6. So here d3 from Anand, getting ready to develop this bishop. Black castled. We have bishop to g5, pinning the knight. Rook to b8, looking at this pawn. And rook a to e1. So piling on the pinned knight. And also getting the rook out of the bishop's diagonal. So here, rook to e8 was played, giving more protection to the knight. And we have knight to e4. Tal played queen to d7, and this looks a bit dangerous, putting off black's pieces in forking distance of the knight. So here bishop to f6 seems like a nice move to play, taking advantage of the fact that if bishop takes f6, knight takes f6 wins the queen. So after bishop to f6, white tries to negate black's strong bishop on g7 and takes some pressure off b2. So here, if a move like knight to d5, trying to gain more control of the f6 square, this pretty much guarantees white a pleasant advantage with no real structural weaknesses. So here he can take on g7, and here even the move c4 seems pretty strong, because if this knight moves, then there's knight to f6. So here, in order to survive, black would have to play a move like f5. But that sort of weakens his king and opens up the 7th rank. So it's not something that black wants to go into. So after the move queen to d7, bishop f6 could have been played, but here Anand opted for the move b3, just to solve the problem of the hanging pawn on b2, and he still has the option of going bishop to f6. So now Tal tries to stop that with the move knight to d5. So c4 played, white wants more control of f6, knight to b4, we have rook to e2, and Anand is now preparing to double rooks on the e file. So we have rook to e6, rook f to e1. So here the safe move for black is to play something like rook b to e8. But here Tal goes for a very risky line, he plays the move f5. So note that the rook on e6 is now unprotected, so white has a discovery now with the move knight takes c5, and this is what Anand played in the game. Tal's idea here was to give up his queen for a material imbalance, so he played rook takes e2, knight takes d7, rook takes e1 check, and rook to b7, getting out of this knight's attack. So black managed to get a pair of rooks for the queen, but his pieces are not well coordinated here. His rooks are split. So that means that Anand should be better in this position. So Anand plays knight to f6, king to f7 played. So if bishop takes f6, king f7, bishop g5, So white is better here because this bishop keeps control of this crucial e7 square, preventing black from coordinating his rooks. And now white threatens to play g4. So here king to f7, knight takes h7, Anand grabs the pawn. Bishop to e5 check, g3, king to g7. It seems like the knight on h7 is trapped. But here bishop to d2 makes way for the knight to come back into the game. Rook to a1, so here Anand could retreat his knight to g5, but he plays a very accurate move. Here he plays d4. So here if king takes h7, then after the capture on d5, white has queen to e3, playing on the dark squares, threatening queen to h6. This seems strong for white. So here, if bishop takes d4, then there's queen to f4, threatening this, and if king takes, then you can take the bishop. White wants to play bishop c3 here, so rook to d1, pinning the bishop. But now queen h4 check, king g8, and bishop c3 with a very strong attack for white. So after the move d4, Tal took on d4 with his bishop. And instead of playing queen to f4, here Anand played bishop c3. This is also pretty strong. So here Tal took on h7, we have bishop takes d4, rook takes a2, getting out of the bishop's attack. And now queen to f4, coming in on the dark squares. Black's lack of coordination now becomes his downfall. So here Tal played rook to d7, and Anand finishes off the game nicely. Here queen to h4 check, king g8, so there's nothing wrong with playing queen to h8 in this position. But here Anand plays the most precise move. Queen to f6, this threatens queen to e6, which would pick up the rook. So you might be thinking, why not block with the rook on f7? So here white has queen to e8, and after rook f8, there's queen to g6, and this is mate. So here after queen to f6, if black retreats the rook on the 7th rank, the rook has to cover g7. If black retreats in anticipation of queen to e6, then here white would give check and then pick up the rook. So here after queen to f6, Tal played the move c5. But after the simple queen e6 check from Anand, Tal Baron resigned the game. So a possible continuation would be king to f8, then white takes the rook, takes on d6, and picks up the knight. That is all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the game, and feel free to subscribe for more videos from the Rapid and Blitz World Championship. And once again, I wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.